Hey everyone. The following podcast is going to review the July 23rd, 2018 line of duty death of Lieutenant Nathan Flynn. I am joined today by my longtime colleague, Battalion Chief John Bean. Battalion Chief Bean was Battalion 2 and Side Charlie command of the incident that morning. He's going to give some insight that isn't normally shared through the common circles that this incident is normally viewed through. So I sincerely appreciate his time in working through this incident and review together. A couple things to note. First and foremost, there will be some tough portions of this podcast. We are discussing a line of duty death. We'll be discussing maydays that occurred, and there will be mayday audio included in this podcast. This incident has affected so many people in so many different ways, and for some, revisiting a difficult situation can stir up memories that may have been suppressed or possibly not dealt with in a purposeful manner. So I caution you, and I also want you to know that you are not alone in feeling those feelings. I promise you. Feel the feelings, but know that they aren't final. They aren't some final destination. If you feel like you need some support, which I encourage you to get, as so many others have, there are resources out there. The IAFF Center of Excellence is an amazing resource for those union members who may need assistance. And the United States Fire Administration has the nationally recognized 3-digit 988 phone number for suicide prevention. There is also the National Volunteer Fire Council's Share the Load support program that offers a routinely updated list of behavioral health specialists vetted by the Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance. Lastly, as many times as I've spoken on this topic, there are always little things that I may have forgotten to include. It is certainly not on purpose, and I always give myself a hard time over it. However, should you have any questions or feedback, or if you would like additional resources, please do not hesitate to reach out at forgedandunbrokenfire@gmail.com. Many thanks, everyone. Be well.
C2 on the scene. I've got heavy fire, one trap on the second floor, banging on the window.
The Forged and Unbroken podcast. We're live. First question I have for you, I was kind of picking your brain about this the other day.
Okay.
You live in the foothills of Catoctin.
Yes.
But you also kind of like double dip on the shore.
Yes.
Do you consider yourself a shore billy or like a hillbilly? Not necessarily a billy.
It's a Hill William. It's a high-class hillbilly is a Hill William.
No, excuse me. That's the first time I've heard that one.
Yeah, there are shore billies and Hill Williams, and I keep a foot in both of those.
Two hat. Yeah.
Yes.
Good for you.
Yes. Yeah.
Good for you. I love that. I was so when I first came out in the fire services in general, even before I was career,
Yeah.
you were the house captain where I started volunteering.
Yes.
And I remember, this actually just dawned on me. I had like a little epiphany the other day that I had been on a couple fires where like we're deep in the stack. It's like maybe 5th due, get to do some overhaul, whatever, some secondary searches. I think the first interior fire I was on, now that I think about it, was with you.
Okay.
I think the Thanksgiving fire. Where it was me and Garrity.
You and Garrity pulling him up in the attic of that that townhouse. Yeah. Do you remember how that all went down? That was so weird. We got a call. They dispatched us to the Sunoco station, I think it is, there at the corner at Great Star.
Oh, that's right.
And we met a car there, and the guy says, the fire's back here. And it was at those townhouses down the road a little ways and back into there.
It was tucked back in there.
Yeah, tucked back in there. And the guy's like, it's back there. And I couldn't see any fire, just standard stuff. And I told the dude, I was like, just drive to it. Yeah. Take me where it is. And this guy drove, I forget, it was some little small car, kind of rinky-dink, maybe a donut tire on it. I'm not sure, and the exhaust wasn't working. But we're following this guy back to that fire. And the driver that I had that day, it was, I think he worked a trade or something, or came in late. It was Dylan Murray. And I said, Dylan, I have no idea where we're going. I have no idea where the hydrant is going to be. So you're going to be on your own if we get back here and there's a fire. You're going to have to figure out your water supply. I don't know, because I didn't know where we were going on the map.
Yeah.
You know, we're just kind of blindly following this guy. And we get back there, and there was a fair amount of fire. And I remember that fire distinctly for a couple of reasons. Prior to that, we had a big McMansion fire, and it ended up, we transitioned from an offensive to a defensive, and we ended up, you know, we lost the whole place. It was a significant burn. It made NFPA's large loss fires of the year. So it wasn't exactly feeling good about myself at the time as a fire officer. I guess to some degree my confidence was shaken. And this was the next moderately big fire, like significant working incident that I was first in on. And as we went back there, you know, we get there and we're starting to deploy the hand lines. And if you recall correctly, that's one of those newer style townhouses where the front is the back and the back is the front. So we had to make access through over a deck and all kinds of crazy stuff, because there was a garage underneath. And we went there and we were on the second floor, and you guys had gotten the hose line into the attic. And I was at the base of the ladder, and you guys were in the attic, and you know, it was nighttime, and all of a sudden I looked out the windows. I guess it would have been probably the master bath or the master bedroom, and the entire neighborhood lit up orange.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh no, it's through the roof. This is terrible. And I'm having this moment of like, man, I'm no good as a fire officer.
Here we go again.
Yeah, here we go again. I am going to lose this one. You know, this is not good. I am not the dude I thought I was. And you guys actually got up in there and got it knocked down. And that was a really, really major development for me as a mid-career fire officer or station company officer of, okay, I can do this. I can do this. We're okay. But there for a scant moment when that whole place lit up, I was like, I suck at my job. This is terrible. So, yeah, that was a funny fire. And I'd forgotten that I remember Polium, and I remember, and after thinking about it, you and Dan were up there.
Yeah.
There was a good bunch of kids around there then.
It's funny. It was Thanksgiving Day, so I showed up that morning, dropped off like donuts or something. Yeah. Did the family thing, and then came back. I was probably in the firehouse maybe 5 minutes. So it just worked out great. Yeah. And when we got there, I remember following the car in, and it happened so quick. When I had gotten out of the engine and walked around to the fire building side, I just remember you already on the deck calling for a line. Like you just magically appeared at the deck.
I ran around. I actually went in what would technically be the front door, which was on side Charlie, and ran up the steps. So there was no ladder. There was no nothing. If you remember, somehow I vaguely remember, I think Chief McNeese threw the ladder to the deck.
Oh, wow.
And while you guys were getting a line, I don't know how he got there. I don't have a linear memory, but I remember him being somewhere in that area.
Okay, I remember.
It was weird.
The other thing was you came out that deck and yelled, I think to Garrity, get a line to go around to side Alpha. That's best access, and get it to second floor.
Yeah, because we had stairs going all the way up instead of trying to hump up the,
ladder
and the deck and all that stuff. I'm like, even though it's a little bit of end around, I think this is going to be easier.
Yeah. Garrity was actually held up by one of your firefighters.
Yeah, really?
Who's different position now, so I'll just leave names out of it. He hands in the door, was like, "You're not going in here," and Garrity was like, "Captain Bean said I could." He's like, "You're not going in." And so he kind of literally weaseled his way around him and then ducked up, and then
look, whatever could that be over there?
So we ended up good. But I just dawned on me the other day. That was probably my first interior fire.
That was a good one for it.
That was funny. Yep. That you've always been a wealth of knowledge. It wasn't too long ago. It was a handful of years ago. We were at Indian camp, and I've probably had 4 or 5 fires on Indian camp. And it was a townhouse where I think the first officer, as a new lieutenant, went on scene with fire from the vent or from the attic. But what it ended up being was in the utility room in the basement, and that's everybody together.
I remember. It took me a second.
Everybody together to talk about like this could catch you.
Yeah.
But because it's coming from this vent, this is telling us that it's in the basement. Like you had a good like hot wash after that for everybody.
That's one of the things. It's one of those finite details that I learned years and years ago. Is look at the vents, the plumbing vent, or a lot of times more often than not either the chimney or the vent from a hot water heater that's gas is a direct vent to the exterior of the house. So if you look up there, and it's funny, I had a fire not too long ago that fooled me. If there's pressurized smoke in that basement, it's going to seek the path of least resistance, and that is one of the paths of least resistance. It's funny, I had a fire not too long ago where there was smoke in the basement, and I had this vent that was, there was smoke pumping out of this thing. The rest of the house looked moderately okay, but it wasn't bad. But I'm like, there is fire somewhere near where that is. But it ended up being a radon pump that had kicked on, and there was like a tornado of smoke coming out of this thing, and I'm like, that's a fire. That something is burning, and it was just the same smoke under a different condition that was coming out of everything else. So that kind of fooled me. But that's one of those things that I really try to instill in guys and gals when they're going on scene is, the building will talk to you. You need to be listening. You need to have your eyes open. It doesn't always give you the right answer. Yeah, but it can fool you. So.
Yeah, that was really good because I was the lieutenant on Site Charlie for that fire. Okay, and kept calling out like, I'm looking through the windows. This is a wide open, clear basement. Yeah, and it was just on the opposite side of the townhouse, shut
behind
door,
a closed door in a utility room.
Going up.
Yep. It was pressurized in that room. Yep. But not the entire basement.
Yes.
And that was what was presenting to me as I saw it. Yeah. And I knew that they were, every once in a while.
You got one. Yeah. Now, segueing in, now you are a float battalion chief.
Yes.
Will you just quickly explain that schedule? Because I think it's kind of, I'll say slightly atypical probably for the fire service.
Oh, yeah, I think so. They came up with it, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago and it's been different shifts. What happens is I cover in, or I'm assigned to cover for battalion chiefs who are on Kelly Day. And there is a set pattern of Kelly Days that each of the normally assigned battalion chiefs have. And it works out that the only way to equitably distribute the overtime opportunities amongst 3 battalion chiefs, at least that we could figure out. I didn't figure out the schedule. One of the other smarter guys did. Was that there's 3. We work 3 days, being a 24/48. We work 3 days only once during the 3 days in one solid week or a 7-day span, only once, and that's when we work Monday, Thursday, and Sunday. So what they did in order to make sure that everybody, all 3 of the battalion chiefs, we have 3 battalions, have the equal opportunity to work their Kelly Day on overtime. I work in Battalion 1, then Battalion 2 for 3 weeks straight, both on Monday. I'll work for, let's just say, Battalion 1. On Thursday, I'll work for Battalion 3, or Battalion 2 rather, and Battalion 3 has their opportunity to work on their Kelly Day on Sunday. And then every 3 weeks it rotates. It just so happens to work out that I work 24 hours every Monday and every Thursday. Yeah. And it's a good shift. It's a good way to fix. It came up as a cost savings plan because guys and gals were getting to work their overtime all the time, and they wanted to reduce battalion chief, us up at the top of the end of the pay scale. Yeah. They wanted to try to chisel away at that. I happen to be lucky enough to get into this spot.
Yeah. It's been pretty neat. So just Mondays and Thursdays, and you're working all 3 shifts.
Yeah, I work all 3 shifts, all 3 battalions periodically. Now, they may move me around a little bit compared to where I'm used to, depending on if there's another battalion chief on leave. I may be technically supposed to be at Battalion 1 this day, but if Battalion 3 is on leave, Battalion 1, just because of our overtime process, the person who is assigned to Battalion 1 would get an opportunity for overtime.
Yeah.
So they would send me out to Battalion 3 where there's one of the folks is on leave.
Yeah. So you get a wide swath.
Yeah, I'm really fortunate, and I think you know this, but I'm a Howard County native. Yeah. I was born in the western end. I've worked pretty much throughout the county, so it's a really good spot for me because I know the county. I may not know specifically the first due as well as some of their people, like, that's the third house on the right off of this road. I don't know all that stuff, but I can tell you how to get from point A to point B, whether we're sitting in the station or we're transiting between stations or it's caught somewhere in the middle. I'm like, okay, we got to cut across this road to get there.
Yeah.
So that works out really well for me.
Yeah. This is the last story I'll tell, and then we'll get into meat and potatoes. I think it was one of the last fires we were on together. I was safety. You were battalion. You had command of a barn fire that was probably arson. And at one point, I came up to the window to check in, and we're on this back gravel road. Barns burning. We had tons of counties there. Yeah. And you're like, hey, go over to those old timers. This street we're on, this gravel driveway, it used to be a through street. Go talk to them, see if we can still get through, because I know there's water on this side. Like, you started just blaring off facts. I'm like, So I go to these two old guys. I'm like, hey guys, does this street go through? And they're like, man, I've been here for like 40 years and I don't, this doesn't go through anymore. Like, you can't get access. But it was just funny because you're in the command car. I'm like, hey, I remember riding dirt bikes down here and this and that. Yeah.
I remember there was a guy who lived back on that farm who we hung around with. And oddly enough, down at that water supply, there's a bridge there that goes into the different county. And there's a stream, a pretty significant stream there, more than enough for any water flow we would need. We used to jump off of that bridge and swim. So I knew where we were, and I knew where the stream was. And I remember this guy, his name's David Hill, and used to ride his dirt bike like a maniac up this little, it's barely a farm road, but there used to be access there. And the guy is probably right. He's been there 40 years, but I'm talking about something that was there in the early 80s. So the timelines match up. It was there at one time, and it's funny, I went back down there afterwards to see what it looked like, and it was grown up. There were trees on there and all that stuff. I'm like, I guess Father Time has. I haven't looked one back. Yeah, exactly.
That's funny. Yeah, it was a funny fire.
Yeah.
So, I guess making a harder transition we were working July 22nd, and on July 22nd for me, I know it was a typical Sunday. Like, it was, we had the big shift breakfast, and normally on Sundays it's a little bit slower day, so one of our senior guys will do a case study on the NIOSH report. That was kind of like our day. We'll get in a workout. A lot of times after the NIOSH report, that'll inspire and spur training. I don't exactly remember what that was, but it was a typical Sunday. It was middle of July. It was nice out.
Yeah.
But it was later that night we ran our fire. Do you remember anything just from not even before the fire, like the day? It was just your own battalion.
There was nothing outrageous that happened that day that I recall. And if I recall correctly, I was on overtime that day. Because usually then I would have been in Battalion 1 and I was in Battalion 2. I wasn't the float yet, so I had no business being there other than I was on overtime. And the other battalion chief who worked with me, he was normally assigned to Battalion 1, so it was my turn to go out.
Gotcha.
But I really couldn't think of one specific thing that happened that day, or just another day.
Just another day that ends in Y.
Yep, exactly.
Well, we all go to bed, and that night, big storm came through the county.
Yes.
And we can start working on building this up together. Excuse me. 1:20 a.m., lightning strike occurred, and this one specific lightning strike generated 10 times more energy than any other lightning strike in the area for this storm that was going through the county. And it hit this massive oak tree
Yeah.
Maybe, I can't remember if it was an oak or not. So it hit this massive hardwood,
Yeah.
ran the root system, ran to an underground propane tank, which then hit the underground lines at 7005 Woodscape Drive.
Yeah.
And then that ran into, excuse me, the house, arced, and then we had that like finger of flame that started burning from that lightning strike within the house.
Yeah.
And it was at 1:51, so lightning strike is at 1:20. 1:51, a half an hour later, that's when the call came into dispatch saying, hey, there's some smoke in the house.
Yeah.
It got dispatched as a local box.
Yes.
So for us being 2 engines, a truck, a battalion,
Yes.
and it was in Clarksville, so technically that's a 2nd Battalion box that you should have been first in on, but that's when we were going through the trial period of AVL. And Battalion 1 was actually picked up on the box because AVL calculated them as getting to this section of the county faster.
Which is probably accurate, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would.
Yeah.
They would have had to have driven by my first due in Battalion 2. We would have basically almost been identical as far as arrival time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I vaguely do remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, so like 2 engines, a truck. Yeah, battalion and a medic unit. I think that's kind of like the normal thing.
Yeah.
So 51's the first engine. From about 800 feet away, before they even get into the neighborhood, they can already smell smoke.
Yeah.
So they know they got something going on. They get on scene, and 51 says, and this is at 2 a.m. now. So now you're looking at about 40 minutes of burn time before everybody gets
Can I
there.
interject something
please.
really quick? It's interesting that was that structure. It was, at least it's interesting to me, maybe boring to others. When I first started to work for the county in the 80s, Route 32, as we know it, did not exist.
Yep.
And we would, and my first assignment, I was living in Eldersburg, and my first assignment was Savage. So we used to go down what is now Guilford Road.
Yes.
And because 32 wasn't there, the throughway. And one of the guys that I worked with, one of my favorite guys I ever worked with, a guy named Larry Dixon, God rest his soul, told me about that house. Because at the time, you're talking about the early 80s, what we know as a McMansion, these large places, didn't exist. There was no such thing. The only thing like that occurred in Howard County was Farside. And they hadn't even built whatever's across the road, Governor's Run or whatever it is across the road.
Farside, Master's Run.
Master's Run, yeah, that's it. Those were the only big houses in Howard County. And this guy, Larry, says, man, on your way to work or on your way home, you got to go by and look at the size of this house. So when that call went out, at the time there was a very informal process that the battalions used on local alarms. One was alerted, and the other one had the option to go if they wanted to. And I heard the call in Battalion 2, and I knew, because obviously I worked in that first due for a very long time as a company captain. I knew where it was, and so I knew where the road was. And I pulled up Google Maps to see which house was on fire, because if it's that big house, I'm like, wow, that could be bad. So I was literally up, and I had initially said, I'll let the other battalion run it, and I'm good. I'm going to turn the lights back off and all that stuff. And then when I saw it was that house, I was like, my spidey senses are here. Okay. So I had gotten out of bed and was starting to head that way when I did that, just because of something that was told to me, go check out this house in 1989.
No kidding.
Yep.
Jeez.
Yep. Yeah.
And so I remember that area because my family moved there from Prince George's County in probably 93, 94.
Yeah.
And so as that new section of 32 was being built, my front road was the original Route 32. So every day from 3 to 5, our road was basically shut down because it was being held up at the light, a mile down the road at 108.
Yep. It was a whole different county when I started.
Oh yeah, for sure. So
I'm sorry. I didn't mean
it's
I
okay.
didn't
So
mean
these
to go
are
off on a side
no.
track.
I appreciate this. That's neat information. So 51 pulls up to this home that you knew about in 1989,
Yep.
and they just go up on scene with they say single family 2-story smoke showing, and then fill the rest of the box because we just had that local box or street assignment, some people call it.
Yeah.
3 engine 111 permit 105 EMS 151 response 7005 Woodscape Drive. Upgrade to a building fire. Operate on Bravo 1 202.
51 didn't make provisions for water supply. They just went into the front yard dry. However, Battalion 1 on their MDT had the latest map update that company officers did not have.
Yes.
So Battalion 1 knew that there was a pool in the backyard.
Yes.
51 is neat and different in that it has a submersible hydraulic pump.
Yes.
So Battalion 1 told 51, go around to the backside, side Charlie, where there's still driveway access, use your hydraulic pump and drop it in the pool.
Yeah.
And this pump, you can get, I think it's 200 feet away from the wagon. 150 feet?
150 or 200. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah. But you can take this hydraulic line, drop this pump into the pool, and you can get 500 to 700 gallons a minute sent back to you.
Yeah, they're rated at 600.
It's 600, okay.
Yeah, it's hydraulic. Yeah, it's a
cool piece of machinery.
It absolutely is, and I am so disappointed that this has not taken over the world.
Yeah.
It's a really, those pumpers, those twin pumpers that they had built, it was while I was still there as a company captain, and I got to give props to the volunteer corporation for speccing those out. Those were my favorite pumpers I ever worked on.
Yeah.
And they have that ability that very few have, and I'm just stunned why that technology hasn't taken off. It does require extra hydraulic pump that's not normally fitted, but when that thing's working,
you press a button and you get water.
Yeah, you press a button and it's basically like drafting anywhere you can get 150 feet to.
Yeah, it's amazing. So that's what we use for this pool, or 51 used for the pool.
Yeah.
Now, hitting the pause button on the fire for a second, talking about the house being the biggest house, one of the biggest houses in 1989.
Yeah.
This is a 7,300 square foot home, 7,300 square feet of main and second level, 1,100 square feet in the basement. So a finished living space, you're looking at 8,400 square feet.
Yeah.
So let's just say the average American home is 2,000 square feet for easy numbers. There's almost 4 average single families in this one. It's a big joint. And now in Howard County, there's some single family homes, quote unquote, that are closer to 20,000 square feet in some of the places. It's insane.
Some of these places are, just
unreal.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, the interesting thing about this house, so you have 8,400 square feet of living space. When you go around to side Charlie, it kind of creates a little bit of a wide V, we'll call it, slightly.
Yeah.
The upper side Charlie is the garage space where they have driveway, but then there's a grade change going to the lower side of side Charlie, where the bottom of like that V is.
Yes.
And that's where it's 3 stories from the rear with walkout access. Yes. However, from the backside, there's no windows from upper floor windows for what is typically the bedroom area. So it kind of almost looks like 2 stories still.
Yeah.
And now people are having difficulty calling that out when they're saying, hey, we're going down to the lower side. We're going back up to the upper side. Yeah. Everything's still 2 stories. Because there's no windows, I guess, probably from the vaulted ceilings and whatnot. So that, I feel like, was some of the initial confusion for just geography and painting the picture of side Charlie. People were having a hard time knowing that there were grade changes, knowing what floors were where, and you're just looking at a massive home.
Yeah.
8,400 square feet.
Yeah. If you look at and I said this at one point during one of my transmissions, because I needed to clarify exactly what I was saying. If we start as our genesis point of the sill at the front door, on the alpha side, there was a story below that and 2 stories above that. Yeah. There was access at different parts of the house to both the basement and the first floor. So that's we ran. There was a full story grade change that started, I guess, at the corner of the garage and went down on Side Charlie, and also at the Alpha Delta corner.
Correct. Yeah.
This whole grade changed down to expose that patio area and
the pool deck
and all that kind of stuff.
That's a good way to explain it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 51 goes around to the upper side of Side Charlie. They're setting up for water. They have smoke showing.
Yes.
The homeowner says, "Hey, everybody's out. We have smoke in the basement."
Yeah.
They pull an attack line and go through what is technically Side Charlie, next to the garages where there's access for like a laundry room and a kitchen right
like
down
a mud
from
room,
that.
I think is how they identified that.
Okay. So they go in and they had a 200-foot line. They reported, I guess there was a handful of ticks in there, and they were reporting, they could kind of get an idea that there was fire and heat underneath of them. There was some coming up behind the walls, I think at some point, behind like some laundry and washer room.
Gotcha.
They could see heat coming up behind it. But that information never got radioed out. I think it was like face to face.
Yeah, it's weird. When you were saying that, I'm like, how do I not remember any of this?
Yeah, right, exactly. Because I don't remember hearing it. And then this is all still while the rest of the box alarm is getting upgraded and dispatched. So one of the firefighters says, "Hey, I can't find the fire." He opens a hose line. Hot steam's coming down at zero visibility. And the officer at Tower 10's like, "Hey, we got to get out.
Yeah.
Let's get out. We got to find another way." So I remember, like, as this incident was progressing, some of these things I heard, some I didn't, but you had a homeowner a couple times saying we have smoke in the basement. The battalion aide for Battalion 1 did 360s and at least on 2 different occasions said, "Hey, we got smoke in the basement." We were talking earlier about smoke coming from the mortar, coming from the ground level.
Down low.
I think it was Tower 10 driver verbalized that we have smoke coming from like that sill plate, basically.
I think there was a window well there. If I recall correctly, he may have even said window well, but nonetheless, there was low pressurized smoke coming from the Alpha side over in the number 2 quadrant, or left of the front door, if you want to call it that.
Which is a telltale sign that it's not in an upper area necessarily.
Yeah. That was the only place that we had what I would consider to be pressurized smoke. I never saw it, but what that report would indicate that's the only place we had pressurized smoke. Yeah. And the closer you are to the fire, the more pressure you ended up with.
And then at one point, so once they back out, the first engine and tower went around to the backside, the lower side of Side Charlie, pulled in an additional hand line. There was smoke in the basement, but there's nothing really pressurized. There's no heat. No. Wind's coming in at their backs. And so they're like, it doesn't seem like it's here. Firefighters start making their way back out, and Tower 10, shuts the door to try to control the flow path. Right. And that's key information, because as soon as the lower side basement door would get opened, fire would all of a sudden kick up on the main level, and you could see it.
Yep.
And as soon as you closed it would go away again.
My speculation is the ductwork had failed in the fire space, and when they opened that door, there were torches that came out of the floor registers. That's just how the heating and air conditioning registers no longer were being fed by a furnace. They were just open sources, almost identical to what we said about the pipe venting pipes. Oh, that's where the fire came out.
Path of least resistance.
Yep, exactly. So that's my speculation is what they saw when they opened that door. All of a sudden, there would be this pop of fire in the in over top of the room of origin.
Yeah. Yep. And at some point in there, we know the hole had also occurred prior to them making entry too. So there was some of that as well. And now you're looking at 17 minutes after 51 arrived on location, they're pulling another attack line. They've gone in the basement. Now they're going back up to the upper side of Side Charlie.
Yeah.
So you're almost looking at an hour of burn time.
Yeah.
At this fire. So I'm going to hit the pause button with operations really quick.
Okay.
Because while all that's going on, the rest of the box alarm is getting dispatched and is en route.
Yeah.
So now we have the 4 or 5 engines, 3 total specials, another ambo, you coming as the second chief, safety officer, EMS officer, all the other things that are coming on our full box alarm.
Yeah.
So the back half, you know, bells go off at 2 something. I remember the box going off. We reported smoke from a lightning strike. I'm climbing into the front of the engine as the officer on engine 71, thinking lightning strike, hit some insulation.
Yeah.
Pop the fuse.
Yep.
Mess with an outlet.
Yep. Exactly.
You know, I'm not even going to get off this wagon. We're going to get there, and the first 2 and 1 are going to, you know.
Yep. We've investigated. We found blank and send everybody back.
Exactly.
Yep.
So, and I remember because I grew up down the street, not in an 8,400 square foot home, just so we're clear, in a little 70s rancher that a Mennonite farmer built.
Yeah.
I knew the area, and I changed my direction of travel to easier grab water supply out on the main road, out on Guilford Road.
Yeah.
So the one downside, I show up as the third engine. I staged by that hydrant. Selfishly, I started talking to Battalion 1 to say, hey, can I get in closer? Do you need me to lay out here? And there was some confusion originally because they weren't sure. Other officers coming down the road did not know that 51 never laid out.
Yes.
101, the second engine, hand jacked 100 feet from side alpha out down the driveway to Woodscape Drive. Yeah. And that's what the battalion could see. So they're thinking, hey, we got water supply, the secondary water supply set up. Well, that hadn't happened. So long story short, one, say red flag for me was I'm having to talk to Battalion 1 to figure out a water supply plan when I really shouldn't have to talk to the command officer about that. So he's getting task saturated a little bit. Yeah. He doesn't have an idea of what's going on with that. The plan was ultimately go ahead and lay out from that hydrant all the way into the scene. Yeah. That ends up being 1,300 feet, and we only carry 1,000. Yeah. So we come up short.
Yeah, I remember us being short, and we had to stretch some additional line by hand. I don't remember the details because I was heading towards the fire, and at that point you guys were a little bit behind me trying to get that all straightened out. That's a consistent problem, and I don't know if you've been around on my discussion about rural water supply and how to break it down, and having worked a lot as both a volunteer and career in rural water supply stations, I have a little bit different way of looking at things. But one of the things, you don't have to figure the whole thing out. As an initial company officer on a rural water supply operation, you at least have to have a plan for the attack site, or the what would not commonly be called the dump site, or whatever you want to call it. You don't have to have all the pieces in place, but it's important that you lay a good foundation for it. For you need to have a plan. Yeah. And you need to articulate that plan enough to where everybody else can pick up the pieces and say, all right, stage 1 is complete, or at least has a good plan, and stage 2 and stage 3 are what we're figuring out. Yeah. That, and we've had this problem on multiple calls, and even recently, as a couple of months ago, I was pulling my hair out saying we've got to do a little bit better job at that plan, instead of everybody just, as loud as the sirens will go, as fast as the engine will go, getting to where the glowing stuff is, slowing down a little bit and saying, okay, what's our plan for getting water should this thing get to the point where we can't knock it with what we've got.
Yeah. And you're not even saying like split hairs and get in the weeds. You're saying, hey, this is the overarching strategy that we're going to go with, and then build it out from there. So that way, at least there could be half a dozen different ways to split this out.
Next time we're working together, ask me to show you my puzzle. Okay. And I will definitely share it. I think it's a good plan.
Yeah, cool. So, I dig it. So we figure out water supply. The engine drivers from 71 and 10 make up the stuff that had the 300 feet that was short, did a phenomenal job, and nevertheless a water supply. When I get on scene, we're looking at an hour of burn time, still haven't found the seat of the fire, no water's been applied, and I see lazy brown smoke pushing from the eaves. So to me, brown smoke, all right, it's in the structure. It's deep seated, and this is such a big house. it is probably being volume pushed now out of this structure. So it's filling this box up.
Yeah.
Right.
These red flags seem so obvious now.
That's a fantastic way to put it. And I remember thinking, that's not good, but and then it went in and went out. I kept doing my normal things.
Yeah.
So we went to site off of the front door. We were tasked with going in. Tower 10 driver said, hey, when you go in, go to the right. Okay. Well, he meant once you go to that wing of the house, go to the back right. I'm thinking he meant quadrant 2 where the fire was and it started showing. I thought he meant like quadrant 3, the opposite side of the house.
Gotcha.
But we go in, we get to the front door. The door had already been forced, but had been controlled. And I see lazy smoke floor to ceiling.
Yeah.
And I use the tick, I scan, I get no heat signature, nothing's pressurized, no heat currents, nothing. So I'm thinking nothing, whatever's going on, it's not right here.
Yeah.
And it was right then that Battalion 1 was like, hey, you know what, 71, hold up.
Yeah.
Don't go in, stay at that front door. And Truck 7, who we're housed with, was going to be writ. So we had been on scene for, I think, 1 minute. Mm-hmm. And once that happened, I remember thinking just how eerie the silence was. There wasn't a lot of communication. And so if 51 got on scene at 2 o'clock, at 2:17 is when the officer from engine 101 called mayday, mayday, mayday.
Okay.
Unit calling the mayday. Go ahead.
And I remember you could hear a pin drop.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was very clear that this was bad by the way the mayday was sounded.
Yes.
I remember I guess it was one of the assistant chiefs or whomever told me later the story about how he was lying in his bed, and he always, he's home, he's off duty, he's all those things, but he lives in the county, and how he always had kept his portable on, but really, really low, just so in case he heard anything. And he said as soon as he heard it, he knew it was bad. He knew it was really bad.
Yeah. He left it on Bravo. I remember hearing that same story from him. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, so after they had gone in the basement, they went back up because of the control of doors and the way things were being opened. The fire showed back up. They all booked back up to the upper side of Side Charlie, deployed another attack line to go in, flaked it out, started pushing in. And what we know now is that Nate Flynn went in to go attack the fire.
Yeah.
From what the investigation tells us, the hole was already in the floor, and he fell into it.
Okay, I honestly didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what the investigators in ATF are saying is what likely happened, is that the hole was already present. So they probably saw the fire, booked back up. As soon as the door got controlled in the basement, the fire dropped back down.
Yeah.
And they went in. So the officer gives out the mayday. On Bravo 2, Nate gives out his mayday.
Yes. I hadn't heard that until just recently. That came out, I think, with the one of the reports or something.
So August of 23, ATF put out their final investigation and their modeling, and they also finally released, after 5 years, the Bravo 2 mayday. Okay. So it's a tough listen.
Yeah.
And we will I might even overlay it on this later after the fact. And he was on Bravo 2 because at the time we had this last channel power up feature where it didn't matter how many buttons you played and messed with, whatever the last channel you were on is the channel that would, when you powered the radio back on, you were on that channel.
Yeah.
So our Alpha 2 is our like medical and main response channel, not really attack channel.
Yeah.
He could have ran a fire alarm or a medical earlier in the day. He left it on Alpha 2.
Yep.
Box came out. He switched zones to Bravo. But instead of it being a Bravo 1,
the knob selector still on 2.
It was still on 2. So he put his mayday out on Bravo 2 at the same time as the 101 officer did. Mm-hmm. And that radio transmission was missed
Yeah.
until I think a couple days later.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when that happened, we had 7's units where I was on. We'd only been on scene for 1 minute and 45 seconds. So, no time to really gather tools, get a plan together. And I remember looking at the captain on Truck 7. We worked together. He went around Bravo. We went around Delta. We're like, hey, we're going to put this 360 plan together.
Yeah.
And then we'll meet on the backside. And by the time we got to the backside, we put that plan together. And my firefighters had a charge 300-foot attack line already at the front door. And by the time I turned around, they had that thing flaked out and ready to rock onside Charlie on that lower level. So we were as prepared as we could be.
Yeah.
Now, you were Charlie Command.
Yes. Yeah, I'd gotten, it was right around the same time that you guys were laying out that I had gotten on the scene and got assigned Charlie. Because this was a rather rural area, I had told the guy who was driving me that evening, we parked in the next driveway up, just to kind of stay out of the way. And so it took me a little while to get down to the scene. And I had just gotten around to the Charlie side. And as fate would have it, excuse me, we sing the praises of the hydraulic pump, but they were having difficulty with the hydraulic pump. So I got a little distracted because of my knowledge of the hydraulic pump and the hydraulic system and those engines, having worked there. I was kind of helping out, trying to troubleshoot and get that hydraulic pump going. And then not long after that, I got around to where I would consider being kind of in charge of the Charlie side, kind of getting my idea of what's going on. I looked into both of the, peeked my head into the mud room on the first level, and I went down and took a look inside the slider, or I don't know if it was a slider or a swinging door. Took a look in there, so trying to wrap my mind around, all right, what's going on here, and what, what's my plan of attack to try and figure out how we're going to deal with this. It wasn't long after that that the mayday went out. I knew whoever it was. I could make out basement. I knew mayday, obviously. I could make out basement, so I ran by myself to the lower level, the entryway there, because I knew whoever it was in the basement. And at the time, I thought it was the officer off of Engine 101, because they were the one that called the mayday. So I'm down in the basement screaming this person's name, just hoping that maybe they'll hear me. For all I know, they come walking to me and, and woo, that was a wild ride or anything like that. At that point, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And I started to get into that room, and I got a little deeper into the basement, and I realized this is being by yourself, getting this deep into this, and not having something present itself right away is probably unwise. And I need to manage this side a little bit better. So I backed out of there. And then I knew the hand line that had gone in, that the mayday had originated from, was from that upper side, that mud room. So I ran up there, and I talked to a couple people trying to figure out who we're dealing with, what happened and all that. And then the officer off of Engine 101 exited the building. And they were on their hands and knees. There was like a little back wooden porch, or maybe a concrete porch or something, right outside this mud room. And they pulled off their SCBA mask, and I ended up talking to them. And that's when, because originally I was under the impression, and I think everybody was, that officer is the one who had the mayday. But in fact, they were calling a mayday for their crew member, which we found out during that conversation where I'm face to face with this officer. I'm saying, "Are you okay? What happened?" All those type of things. They told me that it's not me, it's Flynn. it's Flynn. And I said it over the radio in the transcripts. It's like, I'm with the officer off of 101, and we're looking for Flynn. Flynn is still unaccounted for. And soon thereafter, the firefighter who was second on the hand line exited the building out of the same door, that upper mudroom door. And I had worked with him. I was his battalion chief when he was at a busier station, and I knew he's a pretty squared away guy. So I went and did a face-to-face with him, and I was like, hey, tell me what's going on. And he told me, like 20 feet in there, we were going in, and all of a sudden, Flynn was gone. And so I knew that he had fallen down one floor, and that everybody who had gone in with that initial hose line was out, except for Nate, obviously. So I said that over the radio. I kind of said, I've got these people. They're good. We're still looking for Flynn. And then there was some confusion because the incident commander had, when they said that they had heavy fire on the Charlie side, the Engine 101's officer had heavy fire on the Charlie side, and we're going in to get it. I think if you kind of add up the tea leaves, I think he thought they were going in that lower door, but in fact they were going on that upper door. Yeah. So he actually specifically said, have they fallen into a sub-basement? Yeah. And I needed to make this clear, and this is one of the things that we've discussed in my operational battalion meetings is there's always discussion about how to identify which floor from which side is it two above one, or we've talked about this repeatedly, and one of the things that I've always tried to reinforce is usually, and I just said it earlier, the sill plate of the front door and everything above is stories and a basement. So I said, no, I said it over the radio, they has fallen into the basement, which is one floor below the grade level on the Alpha side. So that's where you guys were. So I just needed him to know we're talking about going down one floor. It's not a sub basement necessarily. Yeah,
and I remember at the time we were having a lot of confusion. Officers had different schools of thought about how to call out basements.
Oh yeah,
and it was.
We still struggle with that to some degree.
But I like the sill plate because it's a geographic fixed location.
It's something that everybody knows. Yeah. We can all see as we're walking by. The sill plate of the front door, is the Alpha side door rather.
Yeah. And to add some more points to what you just talked about, when the mayday was sounded, 51 and Tower 10, and I think maybe, and obviously part of 101 were inside.
Yes.
One of 51's firefighters is like hands in the hole. They're trying to pull hose up. They're trying to grab.
Yeah, that was the guy that I did the face-to-face with.
He's getting. He's in the thick of it.
Yeah.
Trying to do what he can.
He was, knowing a little bit of hindsight, 2020, that guy was tremendously affected by this fire. Yes. I think that whole crew, many people throughout the department in different ways were affected. Yeah. That guy's really, really struggled with this at times. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I hope he's doing better, because the last time I did talk to him about it, he was not doing well.
Yeah, there's a handful of people that have had actual inpatient help. Yeah. And there's a lot of downstream ramifications of what happened from that fire, which
absolutely
we'll probably pick apart here even further in a minute. But he was hands in the hole.
Yeah.
And Tower 10's officer, I think, made a good decision. There was 2 hand lines in. He's like, we know he's not in on this hand line in the hole.
Yeah.
Let's take this other hand line and get it out to cut down on any confusion.
Yeah.
So they pulled one hand line out, and because of the degradation and the heat and lack of visibility, he's like, there's no way we're going to get them from this point.
We're not going in this side.
Yeah, we can't do it from here. Yeah. So let's go ahead, let's pull out and, reevaluate.
Yeah, try and go in from a different angle.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tower 10's officer did a lot of good stuff on that fire. He really did.
He did a bang-up job.
Yeah.
Phenomenal human being. At the same time, I remember there's a couple minutes of confusion also. We thought there were other firefighters missing off of 51 because there was a volunteer firefighter
Yes.
working with the career crew. There was
Yes.
other firefighters that there was a little bit of lack of accountability.
Yeah.
We just didn't know where they were yet.
Yeah, that
for
was-
a couple minutes.
that
And once that
was-
was cleared.
Yeah, one of the things that it, and I think I talked about this before when we were talking about it. When I was doing those two face-to-faces with the officer off 101 and that firefighter who had been the closest on the hand line to Nate, was when you guys were deployed from as the RIT or the rescue team, whatever you want to call it. So I completely missed that you guys had been given the opportunity. You guys had been given an assignment to go in and do that because I was distracted by my face-to-face interviews with those people. So there was a lot of moving parts going on, and a lot of, while I had my eyes closed, so to speak, everybody changed the puzzle pieces. So it took me a little while to wrap my head around, all right, who's who and where are they?
Yeah.
And that was a little bit of a challenge. And there was one part where, because it was on the other side of the county from where I was working that day, I wasn't positive who was working at 10 and who was working at 5.
Mm-hmm.
As the firefighter, I don't really get that deep into the weeds. So there was one spot where I called out the wrong person, or the wrong engine. The person was on the wrong engine, and the incident commander corrected me. Said no, he was on 101 that day.
Okay.
So yeah, there was a lot of confusion.
Sure.
And that's one of the things that that leads me to talk about one of the things that I won't say gets in my craw, but you can prepare as much as you want to for certain events, and you can have methodologies and mechanics and all that kind of stuff for when these type of events occur. But my experience with it, and I can only speak to my experience, is almost all that goes out the window. And you're just trying to figure it out. You're just trying to figure it out. You can always, and I know you've been a shining beacon of trying to be prepared for these type of possibilities. But to say you have a plan, to say that, I'll take this tool in and do this, and this is, I think that's overanalyzing a lot of these things. You just got to get the right people to the spot they need to be by whatever means that they know how to get there. So I see a lot of these, and the fire service is rife with people that know exactly what you should have done, and can pull out something off of their rig that would have fixed everything. Right. It's just my advice to those people is humble yourself, because until you've been in one of these spots, you don't know. Yeah. And there's nothing, for all you know, all you needed was a crescent wrench, but you're carrying around a toolbox. Yeah. So it doesn't discount the need to be functionally informed and intelligent about all of the things that are all the tools in the toolbox. You can't just go in there not knowing anything. Yeah. But the best laid plans sometimes get fooled. Yeah. You just can't predict everything that's going to go on.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. I'm kind of working on a side project right now, almost discussing that exact same thing, about how it's like this bell curve of experience where you start out with what you don't know and you build. And it's like this continuum where you have to get to a point where you gain the skills and experience and really challenge yourself, work the stress inoculation, know what higher end skills in the weeds things look like over time when it's appropriate. I'll go as far as saying 90 or more % of situations are managed by doing the simple things really, really well.
Absolutely. 100%. You can't, you're speaking my language, because that, I can teach, I would much rather have 2 really good basic firefighters with me in a stressful situation than 4.5 experts, but none of them are experts on what I need to know right now. You know,
You specialize in not specializing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I appreciate that thought process, and that's definitely reinforced that from 5 years ago. What happened, and then what's continued on through today is you got to stress and strain every so often.
Sure.
Know what those upper end skills will look like when you do need them.
Yeah.
That's not what's going to take care of most issues, though.
No.
A lot of times it's keeping it simple.
Keep it as simple as you can. You know, what a Occam's razor is. The best solution is usually the simplest solution.
Yeah. So. Once we got around to the backside, and once we figured out that it was only Flynn that was in the quote unquote basement, which we'll explain here in a second, we were getting ready to go in, and from the time the mayday was sounded to the time that we have the timestamp to where we made entry is apparently 7 minutes.
Okay.
What I remember is, I don't remember if it was the captain. I thought it may have been you, is because there was so much confusion at the time about who it was. We weren't allowed to go in, is what I remember being told. What do you remember from that? Because I just remember of 7 minutes of idle time where I was hitting some hot spots from the exterior. You know, we're talking out plans, but we're literally being held up from going interior. Do you remember any of that?
I really have no recollection of that.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's all kind of new to me. I don't. If I was involved in any of that, I have zero recollection. Which is, you know, at my age sometimes.
No, and that's certainly. Well, I know I'm putting you on the spot, not intentionally with that one. I just remember, as you know, one of the RIT officers, like 7 minutes felt like an hour.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
I have 71 and Tower 7 deployed. Tower 3 is about to deploy. Tower 10 is out of air and switching out.
But once we were given the green light, what the senior firefighter, Carlos Brown, said this really well. You didn't hear anything except for regulators clicking.
Yeah.
Because there's 7 of us.
You're busy.
That we had all trained and worked together for so long. We trusted each other.
Yeah.
I'm not there barking orders. They knew exactly what they had to do.
Yeah.
They popped in the regulators and they went. So we are on the lower side of Side Charlie, and we are going into the lowest part of the finished basement, that 1,100 square feet, and there's no heat, but it is zero visibility, kind of like that cold smoke condition.
Yeah, it was. You couldn't see anything in there.
Couldn't see anything.
Yeah.
And they had a workout room and I think almost like a mini movie theater. They had like a massive wet bar entertaining area.
Yeah, I was in that mini movie theater when I decided I'm too deep. I need to back out.
Yeah, I could see that for sure.
Yeah.
When the crew went in, so myself and the captain were the first ones in, and I remember thinking, things are escalating so quickly, and this place is so massive. I actually let everybody file past me so I could scan with my tick about where they were. I was trying to map everybody. Yeah. Like, where are you going? Let's keep everybody loosely together. Do your searches, do what you need to do. But normally I'm the one leading the pack, and I was like, I'm going to watch where everybody's at. This doesn't feel right to just go in blindly and not know what's going on behind me either.
Yeah.
So when you first go in on Side Charlie, going from the basement to the main level, there's a set of steps that takes you back up. It's just an open set of steps. The 2 truck firefighters go up there to see if that was a good access point. And I remember Carlos ran his hand kind of over the floor, and it just felt like it was on fire. He's like, we can't go this way.
Yeah, whatever's going on up there doesn't include us.
Right, exactly. So he came back down, said the same thing. We got to keep going. So now we have our charged 300-foot attack line charged. Still, we're over an hour burn time. Still no water's been flown in the structure. 51, the first engine now has taken a dump because their pumper went out of service.
Yeah, they had a mechanical issue. After well into the fire.
Yeah. Side note, the mechanic came to the scene and fixed it.
I remember specifically, like, as you know, I think it was after it might not have been. Yeah, it had to have been after Nate was out or I was doing something. Remembering seeing 51 with the cab tilted and the mechanic was in there doing whatever he was doing.
Whatever he did, he fixed it.
Yeah, whatever it was.
Yeah. So we're following this wall up. I remember it was like slick tile. Mm-hmm. We keep filing up, and we have made ours. So we started on side alpha, went around South Delta. Once we got interior, we went from Charlie all the way back to side alpha on the interior. Mm-hmm. And so all the way back at the alpha wall, you can feel the foundation of the wall, basically. Yeah. We find a little utility room with a half set of steps.
Yep.
And we're all kind of stacked there for a second, and we're like, why is there only like a half set of steps here? It doesn't make sense. We're in a utility room.
Yeah.
What we find out later, to paint the picture, is that those steps lead to a almost 1,000 square foot crawl space.
Yeah.
It's 4 to 5 feet tall. It's still underground. It's underneath the main level, mm-hmm. but above the basement level.
Yes.
It's this offset weird crawl space. And in that, they had catering equipment for almost 70 people. Like there was tables, chairs, old oil tanks, Christmas decorations. Yeah. All kinds of stuff. It was
anything that
quarters conditions.
Yeah, anything that they didn't want out in their regular house, but didn't want to get rid of.
Exactly.
That's where it ended up. They had the luxury of not having to junk up their garage the way my garage is junked up.
Right. Yeah, they had 1,000 square foot to play with.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Once we got to the top of that crawl space, I remember turning around. I think it was my lineman, Allison Drini, was one of the first ones. Actually, Brogy, my recruit, mm-hmm. I think was the first one, turned around, didn't hear anything, came back down to tell us what was going on. We go back up, and by the time we hit the top of the steps, you could hear Nate's pass device as clear as day.
Okay.
And I turn around to the captain, Captain Love, and was like, hey, he's right in front of us. I can hear his pass device. So it was a blessing and a curse that the fire is kicking up so you could see a little bit.
Yeah.
And I remember we start making entry. We start trying to make our way towards that sound. And I remember feeling wires pull across my chest.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to search up, and I remember thinking, I'm not stuck in it. They're just in front of me.
Yeah.
But they're pulling across my chest. Let me back up. And I thought about, well, I can do the swim technique underneath of this and get under and keep going.
Yeah.
I don't know what's up ahead. And if I got to get Nate and pull him back through this, that's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah.
So I pulled out my cutters, and I cut everything that was pulling across my chest. The fire's kicking up, and it's getting nasty in there. And I remember talking to Allison Drini. I was like, Drini, it's getting bad in here. I need you to knock this down. Mm-hmm. And as cool as a cucumber, I think he called me bro or dude, one of the two. Yeah. And he's like, bro, I'm stuck, and the nozzle's stuck. Because, and I remember thinking, this is a really odd position to be in, because he was hunched over. It was very atypical. Yeah. While I was cutting that path clear, he was wrapped so tight in the wires that he was cinched down, and the nozzle was cinched down so tight that he couldn't open the bail.
Was that from flex duct degradation, or was that another type of wire?
I'm thinking it was the same type of flex duct type. So
those wire spool, coiled wires. Yeah, those things. I remember when they first started to become popular years ago, us saying, this could be bad.
Yeah. So I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
So I cut him free and the nozzle free, and he starts knocking down fire. And at the same time, there's enough fire where I have enough light to see that the captain is trying to get out of the way. And there's enough flame where I can see him as he's turning. He's kind of hog-tying himself, and he's getting kind of jacked up. Yeah. So I cut him free. Everybody's able to slide off to the side, start knocking down fire. And for those couple seconds, it's like, what the hell's going on, right?
Yeah.
I remember turning around to the truck guys that were at the entranceway to the crawl space behind us. I remember thinking, it's bad in here. Things are degrading. We're getting wrapped up. High heat, low visibility. I need you to single stack on these steps because if this place flashes or something
I
bad
may have to
happens,
dive out of this
we're
thing.
diving, and I don't want to dive into a bunch of truck oakers.
Yeah, exactly.
And so
I'd much rather slide over your backs than hit you head on head.
Right. 2 walls of bodies, side to side, shoulder to shoulder.
Neither of which is small people.
Yeah. And they did a great job. I was like, I got you. They kept freeing. I think Munyuan came up and kept clearing more wires out of the way. They single stacked on the steps like they were prepped and ready to go for handoff.
Yeah.
While that was happening, my backup firefighter, Andy Hoffman, was like a cage tiger.
Yeah.
He went up. He had no idea that the whole wire entanglement thing had even happened.
Yeah.
He was able to get around us and get to Nate.
Yeah.
Nate was about 30 feet up, and in this crawl space, this 1,000-foot crawl space, it's split by a wall, kind of dividing it in equal halves with one open doorway in the middle. And that's where we found Nate. He probably, from what we understand, when he fell into the hole, for 6 minutes, he fought to
he was
save
moving.
his life.
He was moving for 6 minutes.
He gave his mayday out, and he was able to probably hit that wall and crawl down, and he died in the space at that doorway from hyperthermia.
Yeah.
Is the official cause. Andy found him. He had his buddy breathing line out to do an air transfer, as that's what he needed.
Yeah.
Checked his gear. He repositioned him because he was kind of down on his chest, on his shoulder. Repositioned him. While that was happening, I was baseball swinging my Halligan bar to make sure like that floor wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Like I was hitting home runs on this floor, making sure it wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
But I dumped my tools. I went up with Andy, and I said, "We just got to go. Like, we can't spend time down here." So,
once again, not time to get fancy. Just time to do firefighter stuff.
Right. It is the grunt work.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we each grab a shoulder and we pull, and he doesn't budge. So we look at each other, we go 1, 2, 3, pull, and he moves. 1, 2, 3, pull. So I've got one shoulder strap, he's got the other shoulder strap, and we're on our hands and knees just dragging. We're falling over all the things in there. We have one little pathway that's just big enough barely for one firefighter, and now we've got the 3 of us trying to make it down. We're tripping and knocking stuff over. But to Nate's credit, he had on all of his gear the way it's supposed to be worn, cinched down tight. Everything stayed on. As we're pulling him out, I think a boot fell off and a glove fell off.
Yeah, I remember discussions about things that were found inside. I think you're right. It was a boot and a glove.
And while this is going on, by the time we enter the crawl space, there's actually a really crazy video that was taken from the outside of the conditions. I mean, it's like pre-flashover conditions of just angry smoke cranking out of the upper floor.
I remember it out of that upper floor, out of that Charlie side door that they had made their initial entry for the knock.
Yeah.
I remember at one time it was just black smoke pumping, and it was probably 2/3 down the door. So it was really starting to roll at that point.
Yeah. There's in the formal presentation I do, there's great video and great audio that I know we can't really do here, but it really paints the picture of the environment that the crews were operating in. It was intense.
It was ugly.
So we get him, we drag him about 30 feet to the top of the door, and I remember thinking, between the entanglement, the heat, the visibility, the stress of past devices and maydays, and us pulling through this hoarder condition house, crawl space.
Not to mention, you had one of your co-workers who at this time is unconscious in the worst case scenario in the firefighting world with you. Don't forget about that.
Yeah.
All the other stuff kind of pales in comparison to what's going through your mind.
The mental and emotional stress is an all-time high. The adrenaline dump is insane.
Yes.
Right now.
Yeah.
And I remember working within 95% of my overall capacity.
Yeah.
Thinking I'm going to save 5% in case another bad thing happens.
Yeah.
But I was completely smoked.
Oh yeah.
And just the mental emotional stress that's coming from it. We get back to the doorway. Dreeny's still flowing water to keep things in check, which is the first water that's been flown in this entire incident. We get him on the fire.
Yeah.
We pass him off to the truck crew, and as that happens, it was almost in unison. All of our bells start ringing, which gave me another adrenaline spike. Sure. Now I'm like, we're still pretty deep in here, and now we're in our last third of air. We got to get out of here quick. We get out through the utility room, back out to the main part of the basement. And I remember the truck guys are smoke now from the mental, physical, emotional stress, and they have to like put him down for a second because they need to take a blow.
Yeah.
I grab one shoulder strap thinking, let me get him out the rest of the way of this basement and drag him out.
Yeah.
And he doesn't move because I am utterly, completely physically exhausted and done.
Yeah.
And when that happens, firefighter Blankenship from the secondary RIT team comes in out of nowhere, is like, dude, I got him.
Yeah.
And grabs him up and takes him out. And this is where I'll tag you in. When we got back up to the main part of the basement, the crews in the secondary RIT team had cleared a pathway, headlights set up, and it was like a clear beacon. Like what was zero visibility going in is now a clear shot. Exactly where we need to go.
Yeah.
And they drag him out, and they get him to Nate's own crew, paramedic 105, his shift, his team, and the paramedic Ryan Glenn and the rest of the crew does a phenomenal job, like down dressing, taking charge, and starts to provide care. Now I'm going to tag you in. While we were going through all that, let me make sure I got the numbers right here really quick. It took us from the time the mayday was sounded to the time that we handed him off to EMS was 22 minutes and 11 seconds. From the time the mayday was sounded to entry, that was like that 7-minute period. It took us 12 minutes to find Nate. We were interior for 15 minutes and then 22 minutes to hand off to EMS. The national average is about 21 minutes.
Yeah.
And that was an 8,400 square foot structure.
Yeah.
While all that was going on, I mean, 22 minutes probably felt like 5 minutes for me. That probably had to feel like 4 hours to you.
It was a lot.
What was going on?
I knew you guys were in there. And I want to I won't say correct, but I want to clarify something you said.
Please.
The incident commander wisely chose to set up a second RIT team. They, I think it was a unit out of 6, a unit out of 3, and maybe 9.
I think it was 9, yeah.
And he was sending them around to stand by should something go wrong with you guys, or you guys needed to tag out at some point, or you were unsuccessful. I wasn't smart enough to figure that out. I threw everybody who came around back. They would come in, they'd come to me and say, hey, we're the RIT team. I was like, go in and find him. Go in and find him. Go. So the part of that, those light setups and all that kind of stuff was me just sending people in. I knew we had to get him out of there. I knew progressively that things were getting worse and worse for Nate's, long term. I knew that, if it doesn't, with a mayday, if it doesn't resolve itself quickly, it's not probably going to resolve itself well. Yeah. And that was something that was starting to really set in on me is, okay, this is not something where he's just going to walk out of here. And I remember I said to the incident commander over the radio, I was like, look, get a cot around here. You're going to have to bring it around the Delta side because the Charlie side, you'd have to go around. It'd be a lot closer. And then the guy EMS 1, he's retired now, but he was around there as well. So they were. I was trying to still manage what was going on back there and keep an eye on who was where and what units were in that. Because I knew, look, we're in as high a hazard zone as it gets, and I've got now probably 5 or 6 units in there. Now you guys were the deepest in by far, but I'm just throwing everything at it. And then when I heard you guys had him and you were on your way out, then I started trying to figure out, okay, what's our next step? What do you need to do?
Go ahead, RIT. We got firefighter Flynn needs EMS to the Charlie side basement doors. All right, RIT, you have firefighter Flynn, and you're on the Charlie side basement door. EMS 1, are you direct? Division Charlie, are you direct?
And it was interesting to see as you guys came out. One of the, I remember a lot about that night, but in your memories, I don't know about you, but for me, there's snapshots. There's certain things that I remember vividly, and then there's whole parts of it people remind me of, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah. He's like, no, I was talking directly to you about blank and blank, and I'm like, no idea. Yeah. My brain apparently wasn't in absorb mode when we were talking. But I remember specifically him being pulled out the door, and then and they pulled, his mask was still in place. He never took his mask off. Yep. And it didn't register to me at that point that, that's because he's not breathing anymore or anything like that. I've done a lot of work over the years with RIT stuff and RIT classes and saving our own classes and all that stuff. And it didn't register to me at that point that his mask being off is probably a worse sign than it is a better sign. Yeah. But one of the things that I vividly remember is him being down dressed, and you said the paramedic, who was it Ryan Glenn. I remember Ryan specifically. He was at his head, and he was kind of up on Ryan's thighs, and they were dressing him down and getting him over. They pulled his mask off and all that stuff, and Ryan said, "He's mine now. I got him." Yeah. I just remember those spots. It was definitely that's a snapshot I have in my head, where I'll never forget what that looked like.
Sure.
The other weird thing, and you know how there's super, super weird stuff that sticks in your mind, and I don't know if anybody remembers this but me, but these people had a pet peacock.
I think a lot more people remember that than you realize. Fuck those things.
The exact thing that I say every time that I hear one. I'm like, this takes me right back, hearing that. Yeah. I'm like, fuck you. I don't care. I don't care if you weren't the right one. You're not the one that was there, but you represent him. So that peacock, I still can't stand the sound of a peacock to this day.
Yeah.
So,
I grew up in 4-H. I raised pretty much every single animal underneath of cows. Yeah. And steer and horses. And if I didn't have peacocks, I had friends that had peacocks. It was never an issue. I thought they were, these nice, pretty little birds until that night.
Yep.
Fuck those birds.
Yep. I'd rather raise jellyfish.
A couple of things to note is when we were in the crawl space, we did not have service. We unless we were at the doorway, or unless the truck guys that were at the doorway could do it, we couldn't radio out. Yeah. So if we did want to call out our own mayday, we couldn't have. Yeah. We only had about 10 to 15 feet of line left. Mm-hmm. We could have only gone 10 to 15 feet deeper with the hose line because we'd used up every inch. And that's where I laud Brogy and the guys performing backup and Andy managing a charge 300-foot hose line in those conditions, in that geography. Yeah. And by the time we made it out of the structure, had handed off Nate to 105. Tower 10's officer went back up that first set of steps I was talking about in the interior. Mm-hmm. And he said when he got to the top, it was just a sea of fire. Yeah. So according to the burn models ATF did, and according to eyewitness statements on the scene, within 60 seconds to 120 seconds of the RIT team of us leaving that space, the space we were in collapsed.
Oh, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it at all.
So, and I just use that to say everything you do, going back to the simplicity of execution and tactics, matters. Like if Brogy didn't manage the hose line well and the kinks well, if the search techniques were slower, if the entanglement took longer, if dragging your lifeless comrade took longer, all these are touch points. Yeah. And if you add 5 seconds to each of those touch points, instead of one, there could have been 7 or 8 of us.
Yeah, yeah, and that really, that was not something that was lost on me when you guys were inside. As I said, I've done a lot of the Saving Our Own, the early versions of Saving Our Own. When I was back in Training Division years ago, we started that program, and I knew time was not our friend. And, I've seen the studies about, rescuers needing to be rescued. And I knew we were against the clock, and I knew instinctively that the longer we went, the more the danger went up exponentially.
100%.
So you guys were inside, and as a command officer, whether you be the incident commander or a sector commander or whatever it is, I don't think people, until you've done that a time or two, can really realize I don't know if you'd call it stressors, the pressure, the whatever, that after a while, that'll get to you. I had the most fun in my fire service career when I had zero responsibility. Every time I went up a promotion, my job got incrementally worse, and I don't, so
I could totally preach to that now.
Exactly. I was never more worried about everything than when I was a company officer and knew I was going to be first in on a working fire, because it wasn't that I didn't know what to do. It wasn't that I was worried about my knowledge or stuff like that. It was, who do I have with me? How good are they? Do I have somebody that I have to prompt, or do I have a thoroughbred that I have to pull back on the reins? There's a lot of stuff that goes through your mind, and then as you go up through the ranks, it just gets worse and worse. You have to look at I've said it countless times, and I've probably said it to you, as the incident commander or a command officer. My experience in the fire service is there are 5, I will say usually, but not always, officers on every fire scene that know how to put the fire out. There are 10, maybe 15 firefighters who are really good at helping them and can work with them. And then there are 30 people that are probably in the way. And knowing those, the responsibility is knowing who those 5 are and making sure they don't get caught by something they didn't see.
Yeah.
That's the responsibility of a command officer or a sector commander or something like that. And you've already started with a very high performing person, and every person that's under them you're now responsible for. So if you get 3 or 4 of those people in this structure, and something goes wrong, that's a lot of responsibility. So that was it was not lost upon me what we had inside and what we had to lose, what we had in the pot as things were going down.
That was a really eloquent way to say that, and it's super impactful. I think I've had conversations with other national officers and leaders that will say, well, no, you got to put everybody on an equal playing field, and you got to bring people up and train them up to get to that level. Because I preach something similar where, like, you need to know who your go-to people are. Mm-hmm. And I don't disagree, but the reality of just the human dynamic is that there's always going to be a bell curve of quality. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if you're in the SEAL teams or if you're in elementary school. No. There's always going to be a bell curve of capability. And to know who those go-to people are is of extreme importance. And
absolutely.
I think for you being a float battalion chief, where over the course of 72 hours worth of shifts, you could be in charge of 150 different people, loose math.
Yeah.
That's every day is incredibly different.
Oh, yeah.
And you really got to check in and be diligent and really.
You just got to know where your 5 guys are.
Yeah.
That's your main deal. From my position, it's just knowing where those 5 people are. That if we get on the scene and I say to one of those people, go around back and tell me what's going on, knowing that whatever they see and whatever plan they suggest to me is probably what's best. Yeah. That takes a lot of load off of me. I don't know. Just knowing those folks is the whole trick. Now, as to other people and what they say, as far as everybody's on the same playing field, I will debate them anytime, any place, and anywhere. And I would venture to say that that the only reason they don't say the same thing that I say is because they don't want to be quoted as saying that.
Yeah.
That's just me.
I appreciate that. I think it's great for a promotional answer, but it's not reality.
Well, you're exactly correct. And the key to a successful fire service is promoting those 5 guys, and then making sure that those 10 or 15 guys and gals are in line for promotion too.
Yeah.
Getting those people, that's how you make a high-performing fire service, is making sure that you're putting the right people in the right place.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. But 100%, I think not enough people are that real.
Yeah.
Or, like you said, are willing to be quoted saying that. But it's so
exactly.
it's so true.
Yeah.
I mean, after Nate came out, that is essentially the close of the incident, even though I went multiple alarms and crews were there for hours putting the fire out.
Yeah.
A lot of us were immediately told to down dress.
Yeah, I told you guys, I knew you guys were beat up, and I'm like, go take your stuff off. You're not putting it back on.
Nope.
Just go. I think there was a gazebo or something. I told you guys to go sit it. Just everybody from 7, go sit in that gazebo. Take your stuff off.
Yep.
You don't have to worry about getting BA filled and all that stuff. We'll deal with that crap later on, but you guys were done.
Yeah.
And interestingly, as soon as Nate was out and we knew he was under care, the next thing that I thought, and as an incident commander was always thinking too, was let's make sure everybody else is out. And I don't know if you remember me frantically running to each of the OICs that I knew was inside, and I said, do you got your people? And do you got your people? Do you got your
vaguely.
people? And then once I knew everybody was out, it's funny, a firefighter who's relatively young in his career at that point, he came to me and says, hey, Chief, if we get a hand line in here and do this and do that, I think we can get this thing. And I'm like, no, we're not going back in this house.
We're done here.
We're done here. Yeah, I'm not sending one more person across this threshold.
Yeah.
I'm done. And interestingly, after I'd gotten that PAR check and accounted for everybody that I knew had been inside, another a volunteer chief who I'd worked very closely with my time as a company officer, he came around back, and it was I saw him and I trust him implicitly. He's a really smart guy. I knew that, not unlike yourself, I was done, and I said to him, I was like, you got to take this. You got to be beside Charlie. I got to go just decompress, because we were definitely amped up.
Yeah.
And I know you guys much more physically than I. And I'm saying, even though I didn't have the physical attribute, the emotional side of it at that point, I definitely I was right there with you.
100%. And I would even argue to some degree that might even be of more difficulty to manage, because we actually had a physical outlet to literally use up that adrenaline, whereas you're taking on all that exact same adrenaline and emotional response without having the physical aspect of it to dump it. Yeah. So I totally understand. I completely understand that.
Yeah.
Podcast 2, where we sit with Andy, we talk from the moment we left, where you came out for the next 3 years of struggles and stresses and stories and low points, and I know that was really impactful for a lot of people. I don't want to stereotype too much, but you're the command officer. You were one of the command officers. You've got how many years in the fire service? Total,
I started in 1982 as a 16-year-old kid. Yeah, I've got a couple.
You got a couple years on.
Yeah.
It's probably, we had lots of phone calls and texts, as I'm sure you did, but it's not like people are going to Chief Bean's house to go knock down the doors to check on you.
Yeah.
for what you're willing to share, what were the next, week, months, years? Like, what is there anything that sticks out at you that like this was a low point, or this helped me get through this? What do you have to offer there?
Everybody's different, and I don't know exactly why I tick the way I tick, and my wife would probably say nobody can understand that. But as soon as this happened and we de-escalated, and I walked away from the firehouse that morning, I have a vacation home within a couple of hours of the firehouse, and I went down there for a couple of days, and I just wanted to be by myself, and I invited the incident commander down because I knew that he would be inundated, and it was just a time that I wanted to be alone. One of the things that I had to you fight the devil and the angel on your shoulder. One of the things I made the decision early on is, over this time that I'm down here, it's probably best not to have anything to drink.
I did the same. I love that.
I just so I was like, that's not going to be healthy for what I need to process. As far as how I've handled it, and there are times when I've struggled. I won't say struggled. Here's the way I look at it. There's a locked room in my mind where I keep all those memories, and I rarely go there. Every once in a while I will, and I don't dwell there. I know, one of the big things that has become very fashionable now in cross podcasts and all that is stoicism. Everybody talks about it now, and there's books and books, and I guess I was blessed and cursed. My father was a very stoic man. Not in the harsh way. He wasn't a hard guy. He was one of the nicest guys you'd ever want to meet. But we didn't talk about emotions a lot. And I guess I got that from him. I haven't sought any help or talked about it, or very few people that I've really even talked to the incident about at all. This is probably this is by far the most in-depth that I've revisited that. But it's very rare that I think about it. It's certainly not something I dwell on, but I am clearly sensitized to it. I don't know how many years that I'm terrible with times and dates and numbers and all that kind of stuff. But several years after the Woodscape fire, the Frederick County had their very, very, very similar line of duty.
Yes, it's right down the street from my house.
Yeah, and one of the officers who worked closely with me as a battalion, not on that call, but he's one of those 5 guys, called me and said, "Hey, you hearing what's going on?" And I was like, "No, what's up?" And he told me, Frederick County's got a mayday, blah, blah, blah. And I have a subscription to an online service where I can go back and listen to archives and all that stuff. And I can go back to timestamps and all that stuff. And immediately I went upstairs and into my office and sat and listened to it. And my wife said, "John, is this something you really want to do?" And it was something I could not do.
Understand.
It was there was some, I have difficult times talking about it, and it's just not something that I like to do. There's been times where I'll do some social media, I guess you would call it, not stalking. It's not like I'm stalking somebody, but I'll look through certain people's social media and see things.
Yeah.
And I every once in a while it'll really, really hit me, but not often. I sometimes I feel like, okay, am I missing out on something? Should I be doing something? Should I not be doing something? But I haven't gotten to the point now or yet where I was like, I need to go see somebody or talk to somebody about this.
Yeah.
I just kind of keep on, and I keep that little box of memories, that little mementos in that far corner of my brain, and it sits there. I know it's there, and it knows I'm here.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much how I do it.
I don't mean to assume too much. There's a couple of things that stuck out at me, and one is I think stoicism, a lot of people will say, misconstrue it as you're not allowed to feel the feelings, whereas I think true stoicism, you're allowed to feel the feelings.
Oh, yeah.
You don't let them hijack you.
Yes.
And I think you are probably fitting that bill.
Yeah.
And I think that you also, I preach resilience, and I think that you have outlets that allow you to decompress and not let those things hijack you, like the shore, like the mountains, and like the activities that you do. And I know you've got your hobbies with like woodworking and all kinds of things. I think you have outlets that a lot of people don't have. Yeah. And that's probably allowing you that decompression time. Oh yeah, I don't doubt that. There are times when I can't remember the Myers-Briggs personality type indicator. Yep. When it comes to introvert and extrovert, I'm almost a zero. I'm right in the middle. So I can go be the life of the party, but I'm just as happy sometimes sitting in a recliner by myself and nobody talking to me for hours. Yes. And I don't even have to have social media. I can sit on the front porch of my house. I have, I have kind of a Victorian place with a big wraparound porch. And, my wife's like, what do you do out there? I'm like, nothing. I just watch. And I'm so happy. Yeah, exactly. And then I tell her the next day, I'm going back out on the porch, and she says, you were out there all day yesterday doing nothing. And I said, well, I wasn't finished. I'm just one of those weird guys who I really enjoy quiet time. Same. I'm an antique as far as I like to read newspapers, like folding newspapers, not electronic newspapers. And all the guys and gals at the firehouse, they always laugh at me and call me an old stogie and ask me where I got that, the Smithsonian or something like that. And then I leave my newspaper on the dining room table, and I come back in 2 hours later and everybody's reading some part of it. So I'm like, not such a bad idea. No, I think there's that tactile cue. I have to have the physical books. I can't do ebooks. Yeah, I struggle back and forth with that. But as far as a newspaper, I really enjoy just sitting quietly and reading a newspaper. Yeah. Something that people are paying attention to is your chair. Yeah. I'm going to call you out on that, but I think it's so important. No, it is. I have a pickup truck and always have, and I found I was at a temporary assignment before I got in my assignment, and they had those what do they call them? Zero gravity recliners or whatever, lawn chairs. Yeah. And they had one at that station, and I was like, gosh, this is really good. But, I'm a big guy, so it was a little bit tight, so I went out and bought one of my own, and I carry that to every firehouse. And that's because I'm afloat, I carry a fair amount of stuff with me every morning. So I pull up in front of the battalion car, and I unload my boots, my lunch, my, all the different packages, my backpack with my laptop and all that stuff, and I set up my lounge chair, and I'm good. Yeah. I'm good. Leave me alone. I'm fine. I am, and it's funny because some people will come over to me and start talking to me, and it's almost like they're invading my space. I'm like, you can't see I'm out here? You're in my bubble right now. Yeah, exactly. Dude, I'm fine here without you, believe it or not. Yeah, right. We're good. My coffee is delicious. I think that's what most people don't realize, is that it's like your moment of zen to start up the day. You're out front with coffee, watching the sun come up. Oh, I love and that's the way you're set, and I love that. Yeah. I can sit and just do my thing, and everybody. It's no different than my front porch at the house. Sometimes I'm out there at 3:00 in the morning because I can't sleep, and I'll just go out on the porch and sit, and it's good stuff. I get that. The Myers-Briggs, I'm almost the exact same, depending on if I take it for personal or professional life. I'm same. I'm right down the middle. And I love being around people. And there are times when I need to be in the mountains when I will not see other people.
And I'm fine with that.
And I'm good with that.
Oh, yeah.
And it charges me.
Some of my favorite times are I'm with some of the best company I'm ever with is when I'm by myself.
Yeah. And I think it's really telling. If you can be comfortable with yourself in those moments, that's a good sign.
I guess. I don't know. That's way above my pay grade, my brain grade.
Well, we're banging on an hour and 40 minutes, and we uncovered a lot of, I wanted to talk about this incident in this format, which hasn't really been done. And also with you, there are some officers, command officers, and frontline officers that have done talks, and we've talked, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for them. And I wanted to make sure that you got into that fold, and I really appreciate you doing this.
Hey, I appreciate the invite.
Like I said, from 2004, from my first interior fire with you, all the way to now, we've had, there have been a lot of times where we've crossed paths and had some cool discussions, and I've always appreciated the support.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
You as when you were a volunteer and I was the house captain at that station, there was a special bubble of some really decent guys that came through, and you were clearly one of them. And I appreciate all the time that we get to spend together. Even though it's, sometimes it's just ships passing in the dark and me saying some stupid, corny joke or something like that. I appreciate all you've done. You mean a lot to the department, whether you believe it or not. You've brought an energy to the department that I would not underestimate it of how it's had a long-term effect. You never know who you. The shame of it is you never know who you've impacted and how much. I've always said, as a management personnel and even supervisor as a lieutenant, now as a battalion chief, you can be a real tough nut guy and really hard on people and all that stuff, and measure your success in that way. But one of the things that I've always said is, I will never be able to know, truly measure my success, because I won't know how many people showed up at my funeral. Yeah. That's the important part, is how many people show up at your funeral. Yeah. Because the rest of it, it's all details. Yep, that's it.
Yeah. I think that's as good a place as any to stop.
All right. Sounds good. All right.
Any last parting words? That was a good one.
Yeah. Enjoy your time here, guys and gals. The fire service, I look at it as a trolley that's running through a busy city. And you hop on, and some people are already there, and some of them hop off, and then you hop off, but the trolley keeps going. Yeah. So just know that you've got the best job in the world. And remember all the things that you have, and don't necessarily dwell on the things that you'd like to have. We're in a good spot, guys and gals.
Yeah, that gratitude. All right. I love that.
All right.
Thank you.
No problem.